In May 2019, Kenny Rogers was dying in a Georgia hospital, and his family believed the end was near until Dolly Parton arrived with a secret plan. She smuggled in recording equipment and convinced Kenny to sing one final time. What happened next stunned everyone in the room. Kenny's voice cracked as he sang words that sounded like a farewell letter. The hospital tried to halt the session, but Dolly refused to stop. That recording became the most heartbreaking song the world will never hear on the radio. Kenny Rogers was born on August 21st, 1938, in a small hospital in Houston, Texas. His full name was Kenneth Donald Rogers, and he was the fourth of 8 children. His family lived in a cramped 2-room unit inside San Felipe Courts, a government housing project. Money was always scarce. Some nights, dinner was nothing but peanut butter on bread. In the 1940s, his father's best paycheck was $75 a week, barely enough for rent and food. Kenny didn't stay idle. He cleaned floors in a hat store for $9 a week and carried plates at the Rice Hotel, saving $60 to buy a guitar from Sears. Growing up poor made him hungry for something bigger, and by 17, he became the first in his family to finish high school. He remembered that moment years later on national TV. In high school, he formed a band with friends and boldly called themselves the Scholars. Funny, since none of them had great grades. What they did have was rhythm, charm, and drive. They played local dances in veterans' halls, blending doo-wop with a touch of Elvis. They recorded a song called Poor Little Doggy and sold 3,000 copies around Houston. The song caught the attention of a local TV show, and soon Kenny was performing on Jive Town. In fall 1957, 19-year-old Kenny recorded That Crazy Feeling in a Houston studio. The small label didn't expect much, but the record took off, selling 30,000 copies in Texas in just over 2 months and reaching number 3 on local charts. That success caught national attention, and Dick Clark invited him onto American Bandstand. On February 15, 1958, America saw Kenny Rogers for the first time, dressed in a powder blue jacket, singing with all his heart. Though the song peaked at only 51 nationally, the camera loved him. But before fame and country ballads, there was a young man in love. On May 15, 1958, just 3 months after That Crazy Feeling was released, 19-year-old Kenny married 18-year-old Janice Gordon in a quiet Houston courthouse. She was already 3 months pregnant. Kenny borrowed $75 for the license, wore his only suit, and went straight to his shift at the carpet warehouse after the ceremony. Their daughter, Carol Lynn, was born on September 15th. Kenny's net worth at the time was a pawn trumpet and a beat-up Oldsmobile he claimed was worth more than the wedding. Still, he was determined. He mapped out club gigs on scraps of paper, squeezing in $15 performances between diaper changes and factory shifts. It was messy and exhausting, but it showed how hard he was willing to fight for his family and his dream. Not everyone supported him. Janice's parents thought he was dragging their daughter down. In his 2012 memoir, Kenny said they believed he had ruined her life. Her mother circled job ads and handed them to Kenny while he scribbled guitar notes. That Christmas, they gave the couple only one gift, a framed photo of Kenny's band, but refused to hang it. They told him that if he couldn't promise a steady paycheck within a year, he should let Janice come home. Kenny tried to stay positive, but every family dinner felt like a job interview he couldn't pass. It took a toll on the marriage. In October 1959, everything collapsed. Their daughter was 6 months old. One night, after a fight, Kenny stepped out to cool off, and when he returned, Janice and her mother were gone. Every blanket and toy packed up. They filed for divorce. Finalized in April 1960, just 686 days after their wedding. By then, Kenny was touring with the Bobby Doyle Trio, playing 6 nights a week for $55 a gig and spending most of it on motel rooms. Later, he said, "Music became my mistress, and the mistress won." In 1961, Janice remarried. Her new husband had a stable job and home in Dallas. Kenny didn't. He was still chasing stages, so he made a painful decision. He agreed in writing to see his daughter only once a week for 2 hours. "I would be her father," he said, "but he would be her dad." His schedule made him miss 42 of 52 visits that year. He stepped away completely. It broke his heart, but he believed it was a fairest choice. By 1980, Kenny Rogers was selling out arenas worldwide with songs like The Gambler and Lady, yet one regret stayed with him. He hadn't seen his daughter in 15 years. He tried to fix it, flying her in Janice, Hawaii, but the reunion was awkward and quiet. It didn't work. In 2012, he admitted, "I chose career over my first child, and that's a debt I can't repay." 3 years later, on his final tour, he paused mid-song in Atlanta and told 12,000 people that success had cost him things money couldn't replace, like teaching his daughter to ride a bike. In that moment, fans understood the deeper meaning behind his songs about gamblers and chances. Yet Kenny Rogers didn't enter the spotlight as the bearded icon people remember. On May 3rd, 1966, he arrived at a Los Angeles rehearsal carrying a stand-up bass, coming from small jazz gigs. At 27, he joined the New Christie Minstrels, a popular folk group with 30 members that had already won a Grammy and sold more than 5 million records. Kenny went from earning $50 a night in Houston to appearing on national TV shows with 20 million viewers. The spotlight came with rules. He had to shave his beard and wear a green blazer with the group's name stitched on it. Their album sales rose 12%, and their 1966 Christmas album hit number 73 on the Billboard 200, their best debut in 2 years. But by March 1967, Kenny and 4 other members had enough. Tired of strict control and little pay, they quit on April 10th and rented a cheap Hollywood studio for $28 a night. They called themselves the First Edition. Kenny reinvented himself, grew his hair, pierced his ear, and invested his $8,000 savings into new equipment. Within 6 weeks, Reprise Records signed him for $15,000. It wasn't big money, but it was freedom. In 36 hours, they recorded 8 songs, more than Kenny had been allowed to record in an entire year before. On October 10th, 1967, they recorded a wild, fuzzy track called Just Dropped In, with Glenn Campbell playing the intro, when it hit radio in January. 1968, it exploded, reaching number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 by February 17th. Though the lyrics sounded psychedelic, they were actually a warning about LSD. The song sold nearly 2 million copies in 4 months, became popular with soldiers in Vietnam, and even earned the First Edition appearance on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. Censors muted the word psychedelic, but it didn't matter. Kenny had arrived. By May 1969, promoters advertised concerts using only Kenny's name. The label leaned into it, releasing their 4th album under Kenny Rogers and the First Edition, doubling Kenny's songwriting cut to 50% and raising his live show pay to $2,500. This change calmed backstage disputes and hinted at a future solo career. Ironically, the first hit under the new name wasn't sung by Kenny. Ruby, Don't Take Your Love to Town, featured guitarist Terry Williams on vocals, but still hit number 6 and sold 2 million copies. The rebranding worked regardless of who sang. In 1971, instead of chasing talk shows, the First Edition got their own program, Rolling on the River. Filmed in Toronto, it featured a Mississippi riverboat set and aired across 163 stations, more than the Ed Sullivan Show. With guests like B.B. King and Cheech and Chong, it attracted 7.2 million viewers in its first season and even beat the Partridge Family in some markets. Though shortened to 30 minutes in 1972, it still featured 48 musical acts and used over a ton of dry ice. The show ended in 1973, and Kenny began planning a solo career. By 35, he'd had a psychedelic rock hit and a TV variety show, a rare combination. His personal life was equally turbulent. Kenny's second marriage, to Jean on October 3rd, 1960, fell apart almost instantly. They realized within 48 hours it was a mistake, but stayed together because his rising fame made being married seem marketable. The marriage ended quietly on April 24th, 1963. Their only argument was over a tiny 13-inch black and white TV, which Jean got. By summer, Kenny was living in a cheap Los Angeles motel, writing bass parts for songs like Just Dropped In. Just 6 months after the divorce, he remarried, his third marriage. On October 15, 1963, he wed 23-year-old Margot Anderson, who was already pregnant. Their son, Kenneth Ray Rogers, Jr., was born on May 24, 1964, but Kenny was barely home. In 1964, he spent 280 nights on the road while Reuben James climbed the charts. In a 1978 interview, he admitted seeing his son for only 9 days in the first 6 months. Margot saved every diaper receipt and sent them to his tour accountant out of frustration. 1 month alone cost $400. Kenny saved those receipts as symbols of a family being stretched thin. By 1975, the first edition had dissolved, and Kenny's solo career was rising with Lucille. That year, he performed 210 shows. Margot filed for divorce in April, citing emotional stress from his absence. Records showed he'd been home only 16 nights in the first 4 months, 1 night home for every 88 he spent on stage. The divorce was finalized on July 15, 1975. Margot received the house, a Buick, and $60,000, substantial at the time. Then came Marion Gordon. After meeting on the set of Haw, she became his 4th wife on October 1st, 1977, just months before The Gambler would turn him into a legend. For the first time, both partners were celebrities, but their lives quickly diverged. She was filming movies while he was performing over 100 shows a year and building a massive 1,200-acre estate in Georgia. On November 15, 1978, Kenny released The Gambler. He expected modest success, but the song skyrocketed. Number 1 on the country chart, number 3 on adult contemporary, and top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100. It carried him to the 1980 Grammys, where he won Best Male Country Vocal Performance. The song's 271 words contain wisdom fans still repeat today, with "no" being the most frequent word. A week before Thanksgiving 1978, the Gambler album dropped and became an even bigger success. Number 1 on country charts and number 12 on the Billboard 200. By 1983, it had sold over 4 million copies in the U.S. Then came the unexpected, the TV movies. On April 8, 1980, CBS aired Kenny Rogers as The Gambler, which became an instant hit. It earned awards and Emmy nominations and led to sequels in 1983, 1987, 1991, and 1994. 9 hours of Western storytelling inspired by a 3-minute song. By 1994, the series had become a full franchise, with one sequel even becoming the highest-rated Western of its season. Then came Dolly. On August 19, 1983, Kenny and Dolly released Islands in the Stream, written by the Bee Gees. 7 weeks later, it hit number 1 on the Hot 100, knocking off Total Eclipse of the Heart. It also topped the country and adult contemporary charts, making them the first country duo to hold all 3 at once since 1968. It sold 2 million copies by Christmas. In 2023, the RIA certified it triple platinum. Despite being one of music's most iconic duos, they recorded only 5 official duets in 30 years. Island in the Stream, Love is Strange, Real Love, Christmas Without You, and You Can't Make Old Friends. 3 hit number 1 on the country charts. 1 became a pop phenomenon, and another earned a Grammy nomination. Fans always wish for romance, but they treated each other like siblings. Dolly called Kenny the only man who makes white hair sexy, and Kenny described her as a sister. They flirted on stage, but kept it strictly platonic, adding to their charm. On tour, venue managers even bet on which city would finally see them kiss. None ever did. The song that defined their bond came in 2013, You Can't Make Old Friends. Recorded in Nashville, Kenny was 74. When they sang the line, What Will I Do When You Are Gone?, the studio went silent. People cried before the first verse ended. Kenny himself had to stop to regain composure. The song charted modestly at number 57, but fans didn't care. The music video hit 1 million views in 10 days, astonishing considering their audience's age. Some songs aren't about chart numbers. They're about truth. Then came Kenny's 5th and final love story. It began in 1992 at an Italian restaurant in Atlanta. Kenny was on a blind date, but couldn't stop looking at a 26-year-old waitress named Wanda Miller. He paid little attention to the woman he was supposed to be with. His eyes were on Wanda. At the end of the night, he left his phone number, which she initially threw away, but later reconsidered. That phone call sparked 5 years of getting to know each other. Wanda's parents were skeptical. They were 2 years younger than Kenny, but over time he earned their trust.